and welcome to the Rollwise podcast, the show where we talk about tabletop games and all things adjacent to RPGs. I'm here with my two friends, and we are going to converse about one of our favorite topics, Dungeons and Dragons, specifically the fourth edition variety. Those of you that follow the channel know that we just completed a quick actual play where we kind of dipped our toe back into the rules, and we said to ourselves, this is fourth edition. Um, there may be some positive comments. There may be some negative comments. We're just here to have a conversation. So I hope you enjoy. And of course, if you like how the conversation goes, don't forget to jump into the comments, say hello, Brent, because he will be the one that responds to you, and maybe me, as well as if you could like, subscribe, do all those kind of things. Anytime you stop by, that would be
Yeah,
awesome.
and actually, what prompted us to do this playthrough is we did a video on the Matt Colville MCDM
CDM.
role playing game, and one of the things that it has been kind of compared to or set as an inspiration is fourth edition D&D, and we discussed it a little bit, and we were called out on one of the comments that maybe we didn't understand fourth edition enough to have the conversation, which a lot of what we did talk about in that was how we felt after playing it back in the day. And so we thought we would revisit it, kind of go through some of the rules and stuff again, and that was kind of what this project was for.
Yep. And so we dusted off the old 4E books, blew off all the dust because I still have them. I still have my fourth edition core books.
I also have them.
Are easily available. And so
Mine
we
are
do.
in storage, but I have them.
Well, as we know, Jeff has made room on a shelf for other things right now. Big wink. Yeah. So there's bottles of stuff behind him. Is all I'm trying to say.
No. There's also a copy of Heart, The City Beneath back there, which I appreciate. That is an excellent game.
Yep. So we thought that we'd at least tackle a couple components here. Really just the character creation process, because that seems to be the introduction to any of these types of games. And then also I thought we would just jump into our general impression from the rules. Now, what we did for our adventure is we kind of did a delve, which was a popular series of adventures that came out in the Dungeon Delve book. Now, depending on your impressions of fourth edition or what you want out of fourth edition, I can definitely see that Delve was for a certain category of fourth edition players, people that really liked the tactical combat. So I think we got more of a tactical combat impression than we did of maybe how the game stands up to narrative or skill-based challenges and all those kind of things. But I still think we have some pretty good impressions as to how the game was, because we really focused on the 75%. The game is 75-80% ready and tailored for combat, so it's good that we jumped in and got a lot of that stuff. So you guys ready to talk about your experience making characters and all that kind of stuff, and what you liked, what you didn't like, all that jazz? All right.
Indeed.
So since I ran the game, I'm going to open up the floor to you two, because you guys actually created the characters. And why don't you guys tell me about character creation? What did you guys really like about the characters that you built, how it was set up, getting out there and starting the delve? Who wants to go first? Brent, Jeff.
I'll go first. Honestly, I think if you watch the live stream, I think my attitude that night we created characters will reflect this, but I sort of hated the character creation process. The character sheet is poorly designed, poorly laid out, too compact, too busy. Somebody sold themselves on this 3-column design, and there was places where you had to put in massive walls of text about your abilities, and they didn't fit. Like that. Like, it was not a fun experience at all. I remember back in the day, the character creator, and Mike actually found somebody that had salvaged the character creator, and that was a pleasant experience. I didn't install it on mine, but Mike walked through. It is a game that screams some sort of automation for it. It needs it. Filling out that sheet is not fun. It's honestly, it's like throwing a 1040 form in front of somebody and saying, "Here, do a complex tax return." I did not enjoy it at all.
Yeah, it's strange. I didn't I'll get back to what's good. What's good with the character creator. But anyways, one of the things, like, I was surprised too because, like, I didn't think it felt more complicated than 5th edition character generation, which is
Mhm.
strange because I don't know if it actually is. But I think part of that is because of the organization, which
Mhm.
I'll get back to in a second. But I do love the character creator. Like, even 4th edition, even when we were playing 4th edition, I think the character creator was my favorite part.
Mhm.
Because it's pretty easy to just plug in, like, sit down, plug in, like, and make a bunch of characters. Like, you can make a bunch
Mhm.
of characters with character creator, which like, I was cool. It fulfills the same thing you get in a video game where you're using a build calculator.
Mhm.
Like, for those of you who like Borderlands or Cyberpunk 2077, and you can go to a web page and you have a build calculator and you can kind of plan out your build.
Yeah.
You can do that with that, and it scratches that kind of itch, which is more video gamey still. What I liked about character creation, I like the idea of the cards or printable pieces you can cut out and
Mhm.
have. Like, I think that would be essential for the game, and I like that. I do think the character sheet is not good for a reference, because if you're trying to put all your actual abilities on there, you're gonna struggle with it.
Mhm.
Um, and the problem, I think, is it's also not very good for page numbers because the book isn't organized very well. I didn't feel
Mhm.
um, like having to go to your character, back up to your character, and be like, "Oh, I get one of these," and then having to go back through all of the abilities and, like, find your daily and stuff like that. Like,
Mhm.
that just seemed kind of time consuming. I think organization was really what made it so painful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd agree. I do remember fondly using the cards, like the cards, the mechanic of
Mhm.
having the cards up and then just simply flipping them over when you've used a power makes
Mhm.
it so much easier to track than like tick marks on a sheet or something like that. And I'm not always a fan of additional, poker chips and you know, little bits of metal and
Sure.
I don't always think that they add much, but I think the cards are an essential part of 4th edition, and I didn't hate the cards. Like I I,
Yeah.
I think if we were going to play more, I would have printed out a bunch of cards and put them into card sleeves.
Sure.
Um, yeah, I'm always kind of I don't know. I like tokens. I think I don't know. Sometimes I'm against cards just because I feel like I blame Fantasy Flight Games for always having like 37 like we have this game with all these chits, and then you can buy these
Mhm.
cards that'll make the game 100 times easier.
Okay.
But like, that's
Yeah.
capitalism for you. Like,
Sure.
it's gonna be hard without these cards. You should buy those too. Sort of thing always irritates me a little, but I get it. And you're right. With cards, it would have been super easy,
Sure.
and probably more enjoyable at a table.
Yeah,
Well, so and it's interesting because I mean, I felt like so some of the positives I saw from, like, just as a game master perspective, I really liked how you did, like, every class seemed to have an equal playing field in terms of, like, abilities. It was similar structure. You had, like, you just were basically plugging in the types of abilities that you had, with differences obviously for skills and some of the other ancillary things. But it's not like they were so different between classes that you were like, this one had an entirely different mechanic and all those kind of things. So I thought it was kind of easy to pick up. However, I do agree that the organization of the book made it hard to get to those places. So when I did find the character builder and I downloaded the last version of the character builder that was supported and made the character in there, everything was just clicked so much easier. Like, I hate to call it a required resource, but if you really are getting into 4th edition for your first time for some reason, because I have heard that 4th edition has a very strong following, and some people do dip their toe backwards like that.
Mhm.
That the character builder would be a heck of an easy tool to start off that process without having to kind of scratch your head, flip pages, and go through all the different PDF documents to get the little pieces of information. Because literally, it's just point and click, and I think it was just as good, if not better, than D&D Beyond.
Yeah, and there was a lot of, and then 4th edition, it was weird because there was a lot of, oh, pick these, go to this list, pick these, go to this list, which I think is
Mhm.
something they kind of got away from. They
Yeah.
just said, get this in 4th edition, uh,
Mhm.
or in 5th edition. They just say these are what you get. It isn't a
Mhm.
pick sort of thing.
right.
Which is partially because there's always going to be one that's better than the others, I think.
Yeah, and I think that 4th edition, you could tell even as you were building characters, there are, like, definitely weighted like, choices that weight better. Like, if somebody was a statistician to tell you, like, how to like, what was your ultimate, like, build for a certain class, you could find that out, and then you could, create your combos and stuff from there. Like,
Oh
I
yeah,
did
100%. There was definitely optimal builds in fourth
There
edition.
were, but you at least had choices.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, most of them were binary choices.
Yeah.
It was A or B this, and then in that there was A or B, and they didn't go down
Mhm.
much deeper than that. But you did actually have choices,
Mhm.
and I liked that all of the classes had things that they could do.
Mhm.
I know neither one of us played. Well, you were a warlock, but you were more of none of us. There's one magic user class, and it isn't like, oh, I've got my one spell slot at level 1, and once I blow that, I'm ineffectually stabbing things with a dagger that's never going to hit.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah,
making
that
you
won't ever
contribute to
happen.
combat.
That
That
won't
won't
ever
ever
happen.
happen.
That would
There,
never happen in fourth
there
edition.
are good things about the ideas behind the game
Yeah.
design. I don't
Well, I
know that
think that's
all of them
where
were successfully realized.
the cantrip attack spells came from in fifth edition. That's why
Yes.
you
Mhm.
have like I think flame dart or one of
Acid
those.
orb or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's why you have those in the cantrip spot is so you can if you blow those big spells, you still can do
You
something
can still
instead
do
of
something
just running,
meaningful and
just
in
running,
theme.
just running around behind the back of the
Mm.
party saying, "Don't attack me! Don't attack me! Don't
I
attack me!"
hide
sort of
behind the
thing.
pillar. I
Yeah,
hide
Mhm.
behind the paladin. I hide behind the horses.
Yeah.
yeah. I would say that's a direct descendant of this. Is the
I
cantrip
I
spells that you
think
can
I
just
think
cast at will.
not all of the things I wouldn't say, but some of the things about fifth edition were from obviously lessons learned in fourth.
Mhm.
For sure, and so
And
and good.
if
Like I said,
fourth was awful, you couldn't find any lessons to
yeah,
take
like I said,
forward.
I think the cantrips idea
Mhm.
because I'm pretty sure, like you had cantrips in I think you had cantrips in third edition, but you didn't have any attack cantrips. I don't think.
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
don't remember
It was all
anything
just
Yeah, they were like
offensive.
yeah, they were
prestidigitation,
all
stuff like that. Mhm.
utility stuff.
Utilities, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm sure that's where the can attack cantrip spells came from,
Yeah, well, and I
which
think
is
the
cool.
idea that you had always a an at will spell that you could just kind of always use,
Mhm,
was I think a very helpful thing for wizards and stuff like that. But I think that, one of the things because I looked at the wizard and rogue and bard classes just as kind of a little bit of a reminder, and I was surprised at how more limited it felt like they were
mhm,
Yes.
their builds and everything like that. Because a first level wizard, they get their cantrips and they have like ghost sound, light, mage hand, prestidigitation. But then at level 1 at will spells, they were just going to be like you were with your warlock,
mhm.
Right.
which was they cast this one.
Magic missile, I think,
th-
from
th-
wizards, and
They
then
well they
something
could
else from
cast
spells.
magic missile, cloud of daggers, thunder
Yeah.
wave, scorching burst, or ray of frost, and they had a way to like build a spell book, and stuff like that. But we never really got into it, so I'm not going to comment on how
Sure.
that class built
But I
their
mean,
spells.
essentially, it's the same. Essentially, your wizard's going to be just like my
Mhm.
warlock, where you use your daily zap or your
Yeah.
at will zap all the time.
Because
Yeah. Well,
so
yeah, I mean, you're using your at will attack most of the
mhm,
time.
Mhm,
The game always felt to me though, like because I mentioned the binary choices in the original player's handbook, because that's what we were playing. I'm not familiar with there was a player's handbook too, I believe.
mhm,
But it felt like one of those games where originally you're going to have two choices. And then like every year there'd be another two, or you know what I mean, choices.
mhm,
And so you could take your base warlord and go
mhm.
8 different ways after 3 or 4 years. And I just don't think they ever fully got to realize that,
mhm,
based on how the game was. And if you've played fourth edition and you played it all the way through to the end, to the bitter end, maybe there
mhm,
were more choices. But the way the game was designed, it felt like here's your dipping your
You
toe
definitely
into
had a
this.
build. You had a build.
Right. But it felt like there was going to be more diversity coming. Like that's why you build that pyramid thing, right? This is your class. These are your subclasses. These are the subclasses within the subclasses. These are specializations.
yeah,
Um,
because you do get paragon paths and stuff like that. So you do.
yeah.
I mean, not every and that was the thing is that you had 30 levels to basically like build a heroic destiny that wasn't going to be the same each time you played it, but there were definitely builds that felt more successful based on just how the mechanics played out.
Yeah, no, it did, and based on what I heard, I mean, some of the additional stuff they threw at the wall later on in the evolution of fourth edition, like there wasn't a reason to go back and play some of the base classes because the new classes were, if
Yeah.
power
There was
gaming,
some power
we've had
creep.
this
Yeah, there was
discussion
some
before,
power
but
creep.
there was power creep in the design to get people to
Yeah.
play the new stuff.
And that kind of that's what 3.5 experienced and 3, you know what I'm saying? I think that both of those editions kind of experienced that a little bit because all of a sudden you had, instead of just having eight base classes, you had 297 different class options, unearthed arcana, deviations, etc., etc. And
Mhm.
you're like, wow,
Yeah, and
okay,
it was you had to multi-class 3 times and do
yeah,
this and do that, and
Well, yeah, and sometimes with fourth edition, like
there was a
just
handful of broken stuff.
yeah, some of the like just to come up with new concepts, like
mhm,
some of them are going to get weird.
Mhm.
yeah,
So
yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, so character creation. I mean, like I said, if you went strictly on the book, I think you'd have a less positive experience than if you use the character builder. Like if you use the character builder, you could be playing in 20
The
minutes or
the
less.
character builder was
Um,
amazing, but
mhm.
I can't imagine a new player because, like I said, I was incredibly frustrated and I filled out that sheet. Yes, it's been years,
yeah,
but I filled out that sheet. I've done characters by hand and forth.
and
Well,
I
and after you've played a few games where character creation isn't that difficult, it
yeah,
definitely feels weird for it to be like, "What the fuck?
this
What
This
does
is
this mean? Why
horrible.
do
yeah,
I have to look here? What is this?"
it's 2 hours long to
Um,
build your character, and
yeah, you would. I think after you did it a few times, it would get quicker every time, of course, but it
mhm,
did feel
Sure.
pretty difficult redoing
yeah,
it. And I
yep.
remembered some stuff as we were doing it, like, but yeah. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, but I think that you're probably right. Your first, like I said, your first one would be really challenging without the character builder. But
Mhm.
I think that the nice thing is the character builder spit out a character sheet that allowed you to have like your powers and stuff already like listed at the back page. So you kind
Oh,
of you had a, I mean, it simplified your outcome. Whereas if you did it by hand, you would have had to copy paste, or I mean, imagine having to write all that and you have bad penmanship like myself. Ooh, that would be
no,
terrible.
it'd be terrible, but also, the character creator, like, because you sent me that PDF,
Mhm.
it spits out your powers, but it also has a couple of quick reference things, so you don't have to look at the main sheet. It's
Mhm.
Yeah.
almost like somebody went, "Yeah, that main sheet's too busy, no one's ever gonna find anything, so
Yeah.
here's the 8 most common things that you're gonna need, and they're all right here." Again, card size, so if you wanted to cut it out and sleeve
Yep.
it.
Mhm.
That was what was cool, is it basically had the card size stuff
Just
Yeah,
already ready
uh,
for you.
in the
yeah,
at the bottom of the sheet. So,
Yeah.
like, I didn't really look at the top of my sheet after I got that character sheet. I was just looking at the bottom with the little character description and then the
Mhm.
cards.
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think so in terms of just character creation, I mean, if we were to say it's an overall positive experience, I think it's conditionally it was a pretty positive experience from a character builder standpoint. But I would probably say,
It's
would you
rougher
guys
if without the builder.
would you guys say that negative if you didn't have the character builder, it's a little bit more challenging to get into the building of characters, but then
Sure.
also the characters, would you say that there's a lot of diversity in the types of characters, especially those starting 7 or 8 character classes. I don't remember how many there were in that first one. Or would you say that it's a fairly standard set? Because I noticed you guys mentioned like, the powers seem
I think
fairly
it's pretty standard. I think one thing that
Yeah.
you run into after a while is that all the characters feel a little bit the same. Like I said, you're gonna, in my opinion, and from when I played
Mhm.
before, and I remember this, is like if you're playing a caster, your caster kind of always feels like the fact there's 3 different casters or 4 different casters didn't seem to matter that much in feeling because it was always blaster spell,
with
run away
minor effect or something like that.
with minor
Yeah.
differences.
Yeah.
Like I think, yeah,
Like,
with minor differences.
would you say, like, the ranger would have felt like if you'd have played a ranger, do you think it would have been that different than playing the warlock?
No, actually, I remember in our
The
game we did
strikers
have,
would have been all the same.
yeah, the strikers all kind of felt the same. We did have a warlock, or
Mhm.
not a warlock. We did have a ranger in my other game, a bow ranger, and like he was just basically a turret of death, just like I was, like just
Mhm.
like my warlock was. Like he would just stand back, and like anything that needed to get to him would be dead in a turn or 2 turns. And that's, yeah, and that's what's going to happen. Like they have to do enough damage to stay alive,
Mhm.
which means and they can be mobile too. Like
Mhm.
the fact
Sure.
that the fact that my character could back away three steps every turn and be concealed like was pretty crazy too. Like
Mhm.
I'm harder to hit just by moving 3 spaces
Yeah.
backward or
I think
forward.
I think there was probably something we're missing with that. I was having a hard time finding out how that worked, but,
I don't think
uh,
so.
yeah.
I
It
no, I remember the warlock being that way. I also remember like the warlord. Like if I'd had another melee character,
mhm.
was it
Yeah,
Wolfpack Tactics where I give them a free shift? It's so that you can flank. Like
yeah.
Mhm.
no
Take
matter
full
how they come
damage.
in trying to engage you, it's like, hey buddy, you want to take a free 5 feet? And in 2
Yeah.
turns, we're each going to get a +2 to hit this thing. You
And
know
I
what I
think
mean?
I did notice something and I think this was probably errated in the new thing. I did read in the Warlocks thing, and I think this was a problem when I first played. In the Warlocks thing, it says anytime you can take a basic melee attack, I can use my my Eldritch Blast. It said that.
Mhm.
I don't think they did that in the first iterations of the game because I remember that anytime because I remember the Warlord could give people a basic attack, and I remember it just being the regular attack. So like it just kind of sucked.
Yeah,
Like
I
it
think
was
but I
yeah, I
think and
think
that might have been me on there because, like, I guess,
no,
like, it
that's on the character sheet.
it says it gives them attack, not a basic attack?
And it says you can use Eldritch Blast as your basic as your basic attack.
Okay.
Which I think they changed, which would make the warlord a lot more powerful because instead of your warlord or like your fighter doing or your like
Mhm.
DPS thief, instead of him just doing his like what 1d10 or 1d20 plus nothing strength attack, he could actually use his whatever
Yeah.
his encounter or not his
At will.
at will. Like and that makes the warlord a lot more powerful.
Yeah. No, and I think using Eldritch Blast as a basic reaction or whatever to it is it's pretty bad because that world that I mean, that's that D10 is even with the higher hit points that
Oh
they
no,
give you.
Eldritch Blast is ridiculous. It was ridiculously powerful. Like I was surprised. Like so, I had fun
So,
because I was just terminating things
yeah.
all the time.
That's fair. So why don't we change this over to the second part, the rules and everything like that. And I think I'm the one who spent the most time reading the rules, so maybe
You
I'll
were.
give you my 2 cents first because I have some positives about the game, and I think that in terms of just like what the game tries to accomplish, I think it does a lot to give you like clean rules in terms of how to play the game. And I think in terms of a tactical game, they've done a really good job to like highlight how the game can be played, positioning, all that kind of stuff. Um, and I think that the rules themselves, as I was reading them, I mean, they really tried to account for like so many different situational things that it was impressive that they basically said it's like they had a board that said, okay, well, what happens when this? Okay, let's put it here. What's happened with this? Let's put it here. And they gave it a lot of time and energy to kind of like create this very clear, concise rules as to how it is. So as a GM, I think fourth edition is the opposite. There's definitely not it's more rules, less rulings in that particular case.
Okay.
And even when you got to the rulings part, there were definitely frameworks for you to be able to create rules, like kind of adjudicate the rule more effectively. So if you were trying to use like an improvised weapon, here's the range of improvised weapon damage. Or if somebody does this thing and it causes an effect that you weren't prepared for, it's not explicitly described in the thing. This is how it impacts something. I actually thought that was really impressive that they tried to do it. And people that maybe don't like that overly simplistic how to play the game OSR style, like whereas the GM, you're there to just kind of like adjudicate situations, but then you have to just kind of like make decisions too, and you have to kind of create consistency that way. I think fourth edition really would help that person out. That very structured, really like how the rules played and everything like that. I think it would help them out a lot. Um, I think on the flip side though, it created a lot of bloat. God, there was so much in there, and it pretty much guaranteed that you had to play the game on a battle map of some sort to really get the most benefit out of it. Because the fourth edition really didn't feel like it was tailored towards that narrative style of play. And don't get me wrong, you can role play a narrative game in like nearly any system if your characters want to play that. It's just that the rules had more emphasis, obviously, towards tactical combat.
Because
And
positioning, yeah, tactical
Mhm.
positions meant a lot more in fourth
Yeah,
edition.
and you would lose a lot of the game, both positives and negatives if you by just doing entirely theater of the mind. Because don't get me wrong, you can obviously say, "Oh, well, in order to get to that goblin, you have to cross over rocky terrain, so that'll cost some of your movement." But then you just fiat how much of that movement.
Right. You wind up saying yes so much, you remove some of the. What you start doing is you remove some of the disadvantages, and that's sometimes how characters get really super overpowered.
Yeah,
Is
and
like
it's
those things that people plan for having a battle map for start to disappear, and it's like,
mhm.
oh, you can just move and colossus into that thing.
Yeah, and so, like, all of a sudden, um, environmental effects, rough terrain, concealment, um, you know, all of those things become harder to manage in your theater of the mind, and with a very tactically focused game. I felt like that first session we ran. I tried to describe it as much as I could to include and
You
And you did
you
a
did
pretty
a
good
good
job.
job with
Yeah,
but
descriptions, yeah,
you did a
but
good
that's
job.
still
it's still it still left a lot out, you know what I'm
it
saying? Like,
did.
it leaves
And
a
imagine if we'd have had, say, a party of 4, how
oh my
much more
god.
complex it would have been, like,
Mhm.
Mhm.
"Where is everybody?
Well, yeah,
I
and positioning would super.
am I flanking
Yeah,
this guy? Was that
yeah,
guy
Yeah.
helping?
and
I don't
positioning
know."
super matters if you're playing a character like the Warlord, for
Mhm.
example, who his part of his ability is getting is board control, is moving people around on the board.
Rearranging, yeah.
Yeah.
Crowd control characters, like characters that do crowd control stuff,
Mhm.
it's going to be a big deal for them too.
Yeah, and not to say you couldn't devise verbal
Right.
ways of approaching these things. Like, I mean, you could literally say, okay, well, since Brent has already encountered with him and he's a fighter, let's say, and you're a warlord or you're a rogue, Jeff. Well, I'm going to flank him because I have the move. I should be able to move into flanking range, and I'm going to get advantage. So you know what I'm saying? You could say it to trigger those
Yes,
types of
you could.
advantages. I just think that without the battle map, I think you do a lot more mental gymnastics
No,
to
you do,
create
and, like, if you're, like, in a 10-foot hallway and
mhm,
there's 2 guys there, you literally can't go past them. But in a
mhm.
theater of the mind situation, it's like, "Oh, in 10 feet, I can I can roll
Yeah,
and slip
I
past
can
them,"
do one of
and
those bulletproof monk slide on my knees, you know?
yeah,
Well, I mean, well, I mean, yeah,
but maybe that makes the game more fun. I don't
right.
know. That's a GM
That's
decision.
and that's a difference between more narrative games and a
It
tactical game
is.
like this. Like in
No,
a
no, it is.
narrative game, like I certainly would allow a thief to move
Mhm,
between two characters onto the other side, maybe at a penalty or maybe with a dice roll. But in a tactical game, it's going to matter a lot if you
mhm.
can move through them or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
and
I agree.
so that's something that I felt was interesting because it basically said, "I have so many rules that you have to play it this way in order for you to be playing
I
the standard edition of 4th edition." And
I
I mean,
I
you
I
could house
wonder I
rule it,
wonder how
but
many people that played used a map or because back then they
probably a lot.
weren't necessarily called virtual tabletops, right? When it came out.
But I
But
think
that's
back
what they
then
are
everyone played
now.
together, you know, and they
Yeah,
played it's
Yeah,
technology has
we
changed things.
always had actually hand-drawn maps when we were playing, like, our
We did
DM
too. I
actually.
That's why I have my battle mat is because of playing fourth edition.
mhm,
Is we had the squares and
Yeah,
everything, and you draw and stuff, and we had miniatures like we did, and we had never played like third edition. We didn't play like that at all.
yeah,
mhm,
we
Um,
my group actually had fun picking out our miniatures, like, ordering
yeah,
them, through a catalog.
it was fun. It's just different. It's just
It is
different.
it is.
yeah,
No, it is.
It was fun. Like I said, I had fun. Like I had fun playing fourth edition. Like
yeah,
us playing it. Like I had fun. Mind you, again, that's offset by the serotonin burst of me being an absolute murder monster, but
yeah,
like I was just rolling well and killing things just pretty much at random, but so that's tempered a little bit in the fourth edition game where I rolled ones for 10 rounds in a row, which happened, by the way. That's reality. When other players at the table are looking at you in abstract shock of what's going on with your dice,
mhm,
but like that wasn't as much fun, but this game was fun.
yeah.
Again, it's
Well,
not something I would run.
yeah, and I think that if you have a situation where you are being successful, the game feels better. Because if you're doing well at what the game is asking you to do, you're like, "Hey, I like this game." You know, as we kind of talked about the dopamine release when you're playing like an MMO, and you're like, "I'm
Yeah,
digging levels
exactly.
left and right, and I'm just kicking stuff's butt."
That's
And then you get to like Mythic rating and WoW, and you're like, "I'm not as good at that any That's earlier stuff."
and I feel that's what fourth edition captures is a similar. It's trying to capture a similar dopamine rush to an MMO.
Mhm,
I remember originally, and I thought this back in the day when I read it originally. There's a rule in there for disenchanting items, just like in like World of Warcraft, where you disenchanted
Oh,
items and it
well,
makes
so you
magic
can keep
substance stuff.
so you can keep your favorite sword, say.
No, it was so you could dissolve your favorite sword. and make something like enchant something else. I think is
Yeah.
what the
No, I
idea
think.
of it
Well, I
was.
think you could. I think you could disenchant the other thing and then put it on. Essentially, your +1 trusty longsword could become a +2 trusty longsword.
Yeah,
Without.
see, they had crafting rules for that, and I don't necessarily know if that's necessary. It felt to me when I read the book originally, and I kind of feel like it now, is like it felt like they were, which is funny because this is something I could totally see them doing now. Is it felt like they basically wrote a book with the idea that this is going to be an MMO at some point. Like these rules will translate exactly over to this game we're making.
Well, I mean, there's some of that, but I
Mhm.
like your hero in your favorite fantasy series. They all have named weapons.
Right, I
They
agree,
don't
which is
have
something
their
I
named
love.
weapon until they find a +3 sword, and then they just go, "Oh," and chuck it
But,
on,
but see, I don't think that's the
chuck
intent. I don't think that's
Mjolnir onto
I,
onto the garbage pile.
I don't think that's the intent of these disenchantment rules, if I
No,
remember
I
right.
think it exactly is. I think it
Um,
100% is.
I
I'll
didn't
have to read them
I'd have
get
to
again.
go
into
back and
the
read
I
the
didn't get
book.
into those as much, so I can't comment there. But I would say that speaking of just how they wrote the rules and everything like that, this is my one piece of advice for Wizards of the Coast, and I do
And
this
they're listening.
unsolicited. Is that if I'm looking at fourth edition, I think there's a good game in there for a certain type of person. I think the rules they did some good stuff to make it easier to read. You know, the text boxes, the color coding. I mean, there were some things in there that helped the readability of it. But then there were some things that they did, and it felt like just how they organized sections. Like, I mean, you know, the core mechanic is always you got to roll greater, you know, it or greater, target number or greater. But if you're a new person and you're just like trying to figure out how to make an attack roll and you read the how to make a melee attack, it doesn't mention that. And so if you don't remember that core rule because you're overwhelmed with the number of rules that you get, you have to go to another page that says like the attack rules or success rule or something like that. You know, and it's like you have to keep that stuff together. So I think, and this is the advice. I think if there was a remastered version of fourth edition where they just went through, kept the spirit, kept the rules, but wrote it in a way that made sense, I bet they'd get skinnier books, but they could print them, and I bet there'd be enough people that would buy them in a collector's fashion that it would work. Because honestly, I mean, if they can do it with movies, I'm surprised Wizards of the Coast hasn't figured that out. Oh, the 20th edition of or the 20-year edition of Dungeons and Dragons fourth edition. So we have our three primary books or whatever the final edition would be, errated, rewritten for posterity. And here it is at $100 a book. There might be some assholes out there that buy them.
I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on dead games and why people should or shouldn't play them.
I
But
don't think
I
fourth
mean,
edition's as dead as I thought it was originally. I think there's a pretty
when I say
good book.
dead game, I don't mean people don't play it. I mean that it's no longer supported by
Yeah,
by the publisher.
Yeah, I mean, the publisher took down the auto character creator, so
Right, exactly. It's technically a dead game. Like
mhm.
they will probably never make fourth edition Dungeons and Dragons. And I think your remaster is the game that we shouldn't name that's already coming out. I think that probably is the remaster of fourth edition. People don't like me saying it that way, but I think that's probably the truth. Is that is a remaster,
It could be.
and I think it's probably going to be. I mean, based on what we've seen, it's probably going to be really popular and do well. And I think
Mhm,
from the fun I had in fourth edition, it gives me more hope for that version
mhm.
of the game. Because like I said, it was fun. I still don't think I'm ever going to be a tactical map type GM. Like, I
Mhm.
don't think that's
Well,
for
it
me.
and I think that it has a certain flair to it. Like, imagine if you guys go through an adventure and I have this thing set up against, you know, you and a very big bad evil villain, and it's a tactical map, and I've got like a fog machine and all that could be fun as hell. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah,
Like, that
the
could
in
be
person,
really
yeah,
fun. And
the in
I've seen
person
some people
experience.
set, you
Yeah,
know.
the in person experience where you go nuts with miniatures and terrain and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Like that would be fun. But that to me is a completely different.
That's a different game for me.
That's a different game.
it's
That's
a war
not.
game
Yeah.
at that point.
Yeah, it's a war game at that point. Like I'm not going to do role playing probably in that sort of game very much. Like you're going to do a lot of tactical combat.
Yeah. And I
Um,
don't feel that virtual tabletops as of yet capture that type of like in-person intensity that it gets there.
Not
Like I
not fully, not
yeah.
fully.
And I'll be curious when the Dungeons and Dragons VTT, the 3D version comes out, like how that feels. I mean, I've only seen videos and stuff like previewing it, but I'll be curious. I'm a curious guy. I'll ask questions. So,
Yeah. I
what about you guys? Any comments you want to make about the rules
I
or
I Well, we had a lot of questions about
Mhm.
stuff, and looking stuff up took a while. Like, yes,
Yeah.
we could have been more familiar with the rules, but we were playing one
Well,
dungeon delve. You know what I mean? Like, but
yeah.
we had some
It's a
legitimate
lot to get back
questions.
on that bike.
Like what are the components of a turn? And
Mhm.
we did eventually find an okay chart that laid that out, but that was something that it felt like, let me give you the 10,000 foot view, and gives you the basic stuff on a 2-page spread kind of
Mhm.
thing. Would have
Well,
been nice.
and we had the advantage of being on computers, so like we could look at the PDF and scroll through it versus
Right.
like back in the day, it was like
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
Brent's
this
looking
is
something up, and I'm like, I need the book. I need the
exactly.
book.
You had to have 3 books. You
Or
had to
vice
buy 3 books,
versa.
so everybody had
Yeah.
one. There was one free at all times.
Mhm.
That sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I am gonna say that building the encounters, I will give it props. Like, the encounter building for 4th edition made sense in ways, that I was surprised by. So first of all, the monsters made sense as to how many you could have. The tactics were a lot more deep because the monsters seemed to be decide the monsters were tactically designed in a way to be used in a specific way. I think that I felt the combat feel and how the approach was better in 4th edition than I have had in 5th
I
edition fights. Like, I think they
I
just
I
viewed it through a better lens.
no, I agree, because my character went down towards the end of the last combat,
Mhm.
and I still had fun, it's fine. I Characters die,
Got him.
characters get knocked down, right? I don't think they were ever going to get close enough to Brent to kill him, but
Not if I had my way. Although that
you
one
can
that
only
ran by me,
stand there in front of three
although
things wailing on you for so long before it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
although the
But
ones
but
that ran by me didn't do very well either.
No, they didn't. But like I thought
but
the
it
combat was fine. I thought the designs were fine. I think
Mhm.
that telling you that this unit is this type of character implies that it should be used this sort of way, because I have played pre-written scenarios where one of the characters is obviously meant to be a decoy or a
Mhm.
surprise or a tank, and sometimes they get used inappropriately. You know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
tanky guy stays at the back. you know i-
Yeah.
it's supposed to be death of a thousand paper cuts with everybody focusing on the big guy, and it becomes smash the little dudes and then attack the big guy with 6 people surrounding it you
Mhm.
know
Yeah, no,
um
but it was interesting to see how they played it out, and I honestly thought that building an encounter would be a lot easier because the encounters I built were progressively harder, and I could see it in how you guys reacted. Now, I will say that it felt like D&D 4th edition struggles when you have less than or probably the less people that you have, the more
i
it struggles.
i
Like,
don't
I
think
feel like
2 was an optimal party size.
I think you could
And
probably get
maybe I
away
should have
with
played a
3.
paladin. Maybe it would have
um
been different.
I feel like you could get away with 3. 3 would probably be like a well-rounded number, but 4 seems like that's the game they designed
4 to
around with
6,
building
I
around
think.
it.
Yeah,
4 to 6
I
bodies.
think you could probably get by with 3, but you're still running into a problem where I think you're gonna run into a problem with 3 where if you have like a paladin, he winds up doing one job more than the other job. Like he winds up healing more than he
Mhm,
winds up tanking, or he winds up tanking more than he winds up healing.
mhm.
And so that hybrid position, I mean, it's always a problem with hybrid classes in games like that where they get stuck. Like you would just rather have the other thing
Yeah.
because it does two things poorly.
Mhm.
And I think that was another problem that this game kind of suffered from is if you had the hybrid classes, you wind up kind of being you weren't as good at both as you could be if two
It
different people were
it
playing it.
Mhm.
feels like a game designed for you to be a hyper specialist, and that sort of implies that you have more than one other
Yeah.
person to
Yep.
depend on.
Yep.
Yep. And so
Exactly.
'cause it and I thought that was interesting, and I think that that's where we did suffer a little bit is that but you guys still managed to do some pretty nasty combos with the 2 of you, and so, like, each class having those
We figured
specialized
some
roles.
stuff out.
But it felt like you could do the role that you were intended for, whereas I feel like in 5th edition, sometimes I got confused as to the role that I was supposed to be filling, because everyone's supposed to be attacking and, you didn't get rewarded for doing the stuff that you're supposed to do, is I think you do in this one,
Well, I
like.
think the problem is with fifth edition and third edition and games like that is like it's that balancing act between narrative combat and tactical combat. Like that's why they're hard to balance is because D&D is trying to do both when
Mhm,
essentially it wants to be one or the other. And in doing both, it leaves this gray area gap where it's really hard to balance. And I think that's the problem. That's why fourth edition felt so good to balance, is because it's like, oh, it's straightforward. This is what a
Yeah.
combat's supposed to look like.
They spent a lot of time to build the combat in a way that made sense. Now, is it as narrative of combat? But is it tactical? Yes.
Exactly. And I think that's probably what D&D's the fifth edition is a little bit harder to balance, because they want it to be both narrative. Like, they want you to be able to slide between the guy's legs to get behind him narratively, but like that's hard to reflect mechanically. Fourth
It
edition
is.
reflected it mechanically by giving people abilities to do that.
Yeah, you can shift.
Yeah, or
How
not
you
just
shift
shift.
is your
No, but,
No,
like
moving
you're at willpower.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, like moving through someone is like, I think thieves have an ability that lets them do that. So
Yeah.
it's a big deal, and it's part of what they do. And so other characters don't get to do that. Is that limits the narrative to that sort of like
Well, I mean,
swashbuckler fighter,
but
but
one could also say is that you could use the abilities and narrate how those look in exciting and dynamic ways yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you could.
your fighter's never. But what I'm saying is your fighter's never going to be able to do that, because it's not an
Yeah.
ability implicitly that they get.
Correct.
He'll be able to
They're
make a
too
5-foot
big.
shift or whatever, but he's not ever gonna. So you're gonna be limited in, like, you're not gonna have like your,
Mhm.
unless they came up with one later. You're not gonna have your like dexterity fighter,
Sure.
probably.
So yeah. So
They're all gonna
needless
be
to say,
tank fighters.
but needless to say, I mean, fourth edition, does it have some good components to the game? Yes. I don't remember fourth edition from when I played it back in 2007, 2008. And so this was kind of like rereading the rules and playing it.
Mhm.
I enjoyed a lot of it. I did find that it was very clunky because of just how many rules there were. But I think that there's a good game in there. And I think that if you're a tactical player that likes the more tactical component to the fighting and stuff like that, I feel fourth edition's a great game for those people. Like it may not be in 100, it may, like I said, it may need a remaster to like hit its full potential, but I think it's a good game. It's just, is it my game at this point in my RPG career? No, I think it's going to go back on the shelf for a while. What about you guys? Did you have an awakening and now yearn for fourth edition every week?
I will say again, I had fun, and I had fun playing it. I don't necessarily go as far as to say it's a good game. I think it's an okay game. Because if I remember right from playing it pretty frequently, you still start to feel like samey. Everything starts to feel samey eventually the more you play it.
Mhm.
Because of how you design the combats, they don't ever like, they're less narrative, so there's just less narrative. They're more formulaic, and they kind of feel that way. And your character's more formulaic, like
Mhm.
daily encounter,
Yeah, it's
utility.
combat's is this the big bad or close to the big
Yeah.
bad? Should I use my daily?
And
Should I
then,
use my daily? Should
or
I
you
use my
go, oh God, I'm dying. I'm going to use my daily. And then it's bad. It wasn't the big bad. And you're like, fuck. Like, which is kind of fun, in small doses. But like,
Yes.
if you did in a time, like I think we played the first time we played fourth edition for like 6 months. And like after 6 months, it was like, I know the formula to how this is going to go. And like, it started to get old.
And
Yeah.
the combats were very long relative, I think, to the power of the opponents.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it on stream. Like, if only somebody could take the tacticalness of fourth edition and, I don't know, maybe say, let you automatically hit every time and just vary the damage much more wildly, where it actually felt like you were doing something, not, I'm going to use my super special Wolfpack tactics and miss and miss.
It sounds like something in that remaster we talked
and
about
miss.
earlier.
Yeah, if only somebody could do that, I think
Yeah.
the combats would be faster, and I think the tactics would feel like they're paying off more. Like if I could have, like, again, with our two characters and Brent needing to be at least 2 squares away from everybody, like we were never going to flank anybody, right? We were never going to get advantage. But I think the way the rules are written in combat, you very much want to be getting that advantage, because that extra +2, we'd have had so many more hits.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's huge. It's huge.
And we'd have put down so many more of those basic units with minimal hit points.
Well,
right?
you can see that anytime the combo, like the warlock combo thing started to happen, where it's like, oh, I have a +2 to this. oh, I have a +2 to this. Like anytime that started happening, it was like,
It makes a
oh,
difference.
yeah,
No, it's a huge swing,
yeah.
and
The game's
uh,
about stacking the game is. I mean,
it's
essentially,
about stacking bonuses.
it's about
Yes,
math. Essentially, it's about stacking bonuses to assure
and
that you can hit
And
them
it's a
every time.
there's a lot of bonuses to stack, and I know we didn't talk about that in our conversation, but it was always interesting when you saw, like, how you got your final number because it was just like, "It had these bonuses," and there were, like, several categories of
Yeah.
bonuses
yeah,
to add, and I'm glad they did. I mean, personally, I think for like I said, my own play style, I'm glad they went away from that in 5th edition, had the bounded accuracy thing that they were doing because that, like, reduced the range, but it did. I mean, big numbers were fun too, just like when you were
I
playing
like being
Shadowrun,
I
you know?
like being able to mitigate whatever target number I have to hit because
yeah.
I roll like shit all the time.
No,
So the
I
bigger the bonus I can get, the more happy I am
and
usually.
Yeah.
I mean the difference between 1970 when D&D and all those other games came out, right, where they wanted them to be historically accurate and missing was a really huge part of the game. Like we've all played video games. We've all played a lot of video games, and in most video games, you hardly ever miss. Like you
Mhm.
may not always do a ton of damage. The damage would be highly variable, but I think that is a format that speaks more to modern players. Now, maybe I'm going to get flamed in the comments, but I I think having a combat where it feels like you're doing something rather than just pounding sand round after round after round, I think is more fun.
Well, it comes down to that problem that I said D&D struggles with is the other division between epic, uh, like epic player characters and level 1 peasant characters. Like
Right.
you're supposed to be a hero even at a first level character,
Mhm.
but you do not feel like a hero as a first level character. And
But
so there's this mental gap.
I felt like more like a hero as a first level 4th edition character than I did as a 5th edition character, if
I
I'm
would
gonna
say
be
you're
honest.
correct. I
Yeah,
would say
Yeah.
you're
like,
correct. But that's
I
that
I
stacking
would
I would
bonus.
say both games are probably better if you jump to 5th level.
But like in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, where you start as a rat catcher, like your expectation is not to go into combat and hit everything that you're fighting.
your expectation is to stay in the town, stay in the inn, see if there's any
You're at camp
posters
clearing
talking
rats
about
out of the
vermin.
tents
You want
while
us
the
to go
battle
fight
goes on.
you want us to go fight chaos warriors, sir? I don't think so.
You're being
Um
conscripted,
yeah.
scrub. You
Yeah,
know?
like when you're the chimney sweep and you get drafted into the military and they're like, "No, you're going out to fight the army." You're probably not expecting yourself to be super badass in
Nope.
combat.
Yeah, you're the character
Whereas
that's part of that
Whereas the
militia.
characters that were like, if you got lucky and you were like a knight or a dwarven like a troll slayer or something like that, like you did hit more often in combat because you're a fighter.
Yeah.
And I feel like D&D really struggles with that sometimes. Like, I
Yeah.
think, yeah, like I hate the first. Everybody knows who's ever listened to any of this podcast. Brent hates the first 3 levels of 5th edition. Like, it was, in my opinion, it's the most painful thing ever because you're
And
not
yet
really
it's
playing.
it's the 3 levels that we wind up
The
playing and
people
then
play
dropping
the
a
most.
campaign, and then we come back to a new
Yeah,
campaign a year later, and it's like,
and you're not even playing. Like,
starting over at first level again.
you're not even playing your class yet. Those first 3 levels,
Right,
like you're
yeah.
playing
Mhm.
some precursor
Somebody
peasant class. Don't even bother writing a backstory if you're under 3rd level. Don't even bother. Just
Just hit the highlights. Where did you come from? Unknown. Who are your
exactly.
parents?
Where did you come from?
Unknown.
Dead. Who are your
Who are
parents?
your
Dead.
rivals?
what's your name?
Tony.
Bob, a
Where did you come
fighter.
from? Around the block. Who are your parents? Dead. What do you care about? Money.
Maybe that's why there are so many tragic backstories, is because if the character actually survives, then you have something to work with. I
Well, I
don't know.
told you why there's so many tragic backstories. It's because no one with a good life goes, "I'm gonna go out and fucking fight dragons for a living."
Hey,
no one who has a steady stream of income who's happy is going, "Oh, I'm gonna go out and kill some orcs and maybe
that
die in the process."
go for the cause. Okay, well, I think we've talked about 4th edition long enough, probably. So, unless you guys have any final thoughts, Jeff, how do you get people to comment to us? Where can they reach us so they can say your guys'
Oh,
takes
good.
on 4th edition suck
That's
ass?
that's a
Or
different question.
You
How do
can
you
you
get people to
can
comment versus where to comment is a completely different question.
So we are on social media at Rollwise on Facebook, Threads, Twitter, and YouTube. Or we have an email address. It is rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, if you want to comment, like they said, please leave a comment. I will do my best to answer them, or Mike will do their best to answer them, especially if they're long. Those are always fun to read. I do enjoy those. And as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.